My name is Kendra, and I'm 27 the day my parents sat me down. I felt a familiar, icy dread. They looked at me with that careful, condescending pity, the one that meant my future had already been decided, and I was about to be informed. What they delivered next wasn't just unfair. It was a dagger to my heart that sparked a silent, burning fury I never knew I possessed. I'm Kendra, 27, and I watched my sister Melissa, serene and perfectly polished, scrolling on her phone beside them. Her casual indifference just twisted the knife deeper. My arms were crossed, a silent shield, bracing for the inevitable comparison, the pronouncement of my lesser fate. My dad cleared his throat, launching into their grand plan. We've decided to help both our daughters get a proper start in life. My mom beamed, a strained, performative smile that did nothing to hide the judgment in her eyes. Then came the bombshell. Melissa, they announced, was getting a brand new apartment. Downtown, modern, sleek. Elevator, gym, security, the works. Melissa finally looked up, a slow, self-satisfied smile spreading across her face, already picturing herself in that urban paradise. Then my mom turned to me. "And for you, Kendra," she said, "we're giving you a house." For a fleeting half-second, a dangerous, fragile hope flickered within me. A house. That sounded substantial, a place of my own, maybe, just maybe, this time it was equitable. But that hope died a swift, brutal death the moment they showed me the address and the photos. My stomach churned. It was ancient, dilapidated. Walls cracked like spiderwebs, windows boarded up, a roof that sagged like a tired old man, and a jungle of weeds taller than me choking the front yard. It looked utterly abandoned, forgotten, as if even the city had thrown its hands up in defeat. My mom rushed to fill the silence, her voice overly bright. "It's full of potential, Kendra. And you're so practical, so handy. This suits you perfectly." Then, the words that would burn themselves into my memory, echoing later like a haunting prophecy. "Melissa, you see, she needs something safe, something ready." The raw injustice of it all stole my breath. My parents gave me an old, dilapidated house, and my sister a brand new apartment. Every fiber of my being screamed to argue, to unleash the years of suppressed rage, to shout that I worked just as hard, that I deserved more, that I'd never asked for less. But the conditioning of a lifetime, the role of the reasonable daughter, kicked in. I nodded. I swallowed the bitter pill. I even managed a choked thank you. They rushed the paperwork, eager to be done with it. "The house is yours," they declared, almost too quickly. "No mortgage, no rent, just yours." Melissa's apartment, on the other hand, was fully paid for, furnished, decorated. My mom even picked out the curtains. A week later, I moved into my new house. That first night, rain dripped through the ceiling, splashing into a bucket I'd haphazardly placed in the living room. The heater was a distant dream. The floorboards groaned and shrieked with every step, as if protesting my very presence. But I stood there in the dark, surrounded by dust and the profound silence of neglect, and I whispered to myself, "This is still something. This is a starting point." I plunged into work. 2 jobs, every spare dollar squirreled away. Nights and weekends became my classroom. I devoured YouTube tutorials, borrowed tools, and scraped my knuckles raw. I learned to patch a roof, one agonizing section at a time. I spackled cracks, replaced broken panes, and hauled out decades of trash from the overgrown backyard. Slowly, painstakingly, with sweat and tears, the house began to breathe again. Months bled into a year. That wreck of a house became a home. Not flashy, not luxurious, but solid, warm, safe. The kind of place that felt truly earned. I planted a small, defiant garden out back. I refinished the floors until they gleamed. I even built a tiny sunroom where the crumbling porch once stood. By the way, if you're finding yourself nodding along, thinking I know that feeling, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. You won't want to miss what happens next. Then they called. My parents wanted to visit. My mom walked through the front door, and her breath hitched. Her eyes, usually so dismissive of my efforts, scanned the pristine walls, the sunlight pouring through new windows, the quiet comfort I'd created. Her lips parted, not in pride, but in a cold, calculating assessment. My dad remained silent, his jaw clenched. Melissa wasn't there, but her entitled voice already echoed in my head. Finally, my mom spoke, and her words landed like a physical blow. "Kendra," she said, her voice dripping with an unnerving sweetness, "we're taking this house back. It now belongs to your sister. You have 48 hours to move out." I stared, waiting for the punchline, the cruel joke. It never came. She continued, explaining, with an infuriating lack of self-awareness, how unfair it was that Melissa's apartment was too small compared to this, how family assets needed to be rebalanced. She said it as if it were the most logical thing in the world. I reminded her, my voice unnaturally calm, that the house was legally mine. She waved it off. "Paperwork can be handled." My dad looked away, avoiding my eyes. That hurt more than her casual cruelty. 2 days later, Melissa arrived, boxes piled high, a rental truck parked crookedly in my newly cleared driveway. Confidence radiated from her, a palpable aura of entitlement. She was already chattering about where her couch would go, how she'd repaint the bedrooms. But then she stepped fully inside and stopped. Her face, usually so composed, drained of all color. The smug smile vanished. Her eyes darted from the walls to the floors to the windows, a dawning horror replacing her initial excitement. In that moment, another line, sharp and prophetic, echoed in my mind. When my sister arrived with her boxes, her face turned pale at the scene she saw. Because what she saw wasn't just a beautifully renovated house. It was something she couldn't touch, couldn't claim, something tied not just to walls and paint, but to the very ground beneath it. And none of them, not yet, understood the truth about that land. They had no idea why giving me that old, dilapidated house was the one mistake they'd never be able to undo. And that, my friends, is where everything truly began. Melissa stood frozen, boxes half unloaded, her confidence evaporating like mist. My mom, oblivious, mistook Melissa's silence for awe and beamed proudly, already basking in the reflected glory of Melissa's new reward. My dad cleared his throat again, repeating, "Kendra, 48 hours, as if brute force repetition could somehow conjure legality or fairness. I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I simply looked at Melissa, who finally turned to me, confusion clouding her features. She asked why I was smiling, because in that moment, I realized something none of them had bothered to check. They'd been so utterly fixated on the house itself, on its perceived worthlessness, that they'd completely ignored the most important part, the land beneath it. When my parents had handed me those papers a year ago, I didn't just sign them. I read them. Every single page. Every convoluted clause. The house, they'd considered a write-off, a liability they were eager to dump. But the land had never been transferred back to them. It was zoned differently from the surrounding properties, grandfathered into a unique commercial residential overlap from decades ago. While they were busy furnishing Melissa's luxury apartment, I was not only fixing my house, but quietly consulting a lawyer. Not to fight my parents, but to understand exactly what I owned. And what I owned wasn't just a meticulously renovated home. I owned a prime piece of land that a development company had been circling for years. 3 months prior, I'd signed a conditional agreement. The developer didn't care about the house. They wanted the land, its strategic location, its access, its unique zoning. The deal was simple. Once my renovations met safety codes, the contract would finalize. That day had come last week. The money? Already in escrow. So when my mom, still oblivious, declared again, "We're taking this house back," I calmly asked her, "How exactly do you plan to do that?" She bristled, snapping that they were my parents, that they'd given it to me. That family doesn't need permission. That's when I pulled out the folder. Deed. Zoning certificate. Development contract. I placed them gently on the kitchen counter I'd installed with my own hands. Silence fell, thick and suffocating. My dad picked up the papers first, his hands visibly shaking as he read. My mom leaned over his shoulder, her face tightening with every line. Melissa stepped closer, her initial panic rapidly morphing into something resembling pure terror as she realized this wasn't just about paint colors and bedroom layouts anymore. I told them the truth slowly, clearly, leaving no room for misunderstanding. The house was legally mine. The land was legally mine. And in less than 2 weeks, I wouldn't own either of them because I was selling. Not to Melissa, not back to my parents, but to people who actually understood its staggering value. My mom's voice cracked. "How much?" she whispered. I told her the number. Her knees nearly buckled. It was more than the cost of Melissa's apartment. More than they had ever planned to spend on me. More than they could possibly match. Melissa burst into tears, wailing that it wasn't fair, that she'd already told her friends that this was supposed to be hers. I reminded her, gently, that it never was. And then the line echoed again in my mind, bitter and sharp. My parents gave me an old, dilapidated house and my sister a brand new apartment. They didn't know who owned the land. They'd seen scraps and given me scraps, never realizing they'd handed me the very foundation. They tried everything: guilt, anger, desperate promises. My mom offered to switch, to give me Melissa's apartment instead, as if that could somehow erase a year of dismissal, of being told I was less. My dad, finally meeting my eyes, mumbled we could work something out. But it was too late. I wasn't angry anymore. I was simply done. 2 weeks later, the developer's team arrived. Melissa never moved in. Her boxes went back onto the rental truck. My parents stopped calling. The sale finalized quietly. I watched them tear down the house I had rebuilt, a strange mixture of pride and peace filling me. That house had never been my punishment. It had been my test, a forge where I found my own strength. With the money, I bought my own place on my own terms. No comparisons, no favoritism, just profound, well-earned peace. Months later, I heard Melissa's apartment had been sold. My parents, apparently, I'm telling you this story because tales like mine rarely begin with revenge. They start with being utterly underestimated. If you've ever been given less, expected to accept scraps, or told to be grateful for unfairness, please remember this. Sometimes, the very thing they look down on holds more power, more potential, and more value than they could ever possibly imagine. What would you have done in my place? Have you ever had a moment where you realized what you were given was actually a hidden advantage? Tell me what you think in the comments below. I really want to know. Needed the money. Funny how things balance out.